Hey guys, welcome to Windshine Audio. It's been a while since my last video. I think it was at least 2 to 3 weeks ago. I've been very busy with my personal life. A good thing in my opinion. I'm in the midst of relocating from my old place to my new apartment, and let's just say the amount of work to relocate from one place that I have been staying for the past 15 years to the new smaller apartment is no joke. The amount of work, the amount of dedication, and the time consumed part is beyond imagination. If you have ever relocated, you know what I mean. So I do apologize for my absence in my YouTube channel, as well as some sort of slower response by using email or WhatsApp communication. I do apologize for that. But thankfully, I have a team of people working for me right now, and they are working very hard to support the customer during my absence. Nonetheless, this video today is to release the Ares II or the Enyo DAC new firmware. We released the firmware update for the Ares II and Enyo DAC sometime in March 2023. Just in case you are watching this video a couple of years later. So the first release of the firmware was in March 2023 for Ares II and Enyo DAC. We did not expect to release a newer firmware just within the 4 months time span. The first release of the firmware for Enyo and Ares II was very well received in my humble opinion. Subsequently, we released the firmware for the Pontus 2, and we did monitor and gather feedback from the customer, especially for the Pontus 2 DAC firmware update. Some of the customers say that the travel energy of the new firmware, particularly for the Pontus DAC firmware update, is a little bit too prominent. So DENAFRIPS has been working on this and we subsequently released the new firmware for the Pontus DAC, and the new firmware for the Pontus DAC, in my opinion, was a very successful one. So we thought we should apply the same technique for all the DAC available for DENAFRIPS, and we did roll out that revised firmware for Terminator 2, Terminator Plus, as well as the original Terminator with the DSP upgraded. So the new firmware for the Terminator DAC was pretty well received as well. And we did, again, promise to apply the same technique for the entry-level Enyo and Ares II DAC. And this brings us to the video today. We are ready to roll out the firmware, and some of you might have found the new firmware by using the previous firmware update to download link provided to you before. So if you have ever submit the firmware update request using the web form link below, you should have received the firmware update to download link from us previously. And if you have kept the email with you and you log in to this particular website, you should be able to find the new firmware for the Enyo or the Ares II DAC. I know there's a little bit of confusion here where what is Enyo DAC, what is Ares II DAC, what is older Ares DAC. Ares has been around for a long time. This is one of the first R-2R DAC released by DENAFRIPS since year 2016 or year 2017. Then we were using Exmos and Armanero USB receiver. The two particular models of this Ares DAC is not firmware upgradable. Subsequently, DENAFRIPS adopt a new USB proprietary solution with a new FPGA chip. The good news is the new proprietary USB solution and a new FPGA chip released somewhere in, if I'm not wrong, I do not have the year and date with me, somewhere in August 2018. The particular Ares or the Ares II release then is firmware upgradable. So since then, DENAFRIPS has been adopting the same USB proprietary solution with the new FPGA chip in their DAC, ranging from Ares II, Pontus, Venus, Terminator, and so on. So if you have one of the Ares II or the Ares DAC purchased from us sometime in August 2018, it is firmware upgradable. So again, come back to the FPGA chip. There are several models of FPGA chip used in the Ares II, the August 2018 Ares, and the Enyo DAC. We have the data with me, but why we still ask for the firmware or the FPGA photo is really because updating the correct firmware to the correct FPGA chip used in the DAC is utmost crucial and important. If you update the wrong firmware to the DAC with the wrong FPGA chip, it will for sure break the DAC. That's the last thing that we want. So we always ask you to provide the correct FPGA photo used in the Enyo or the Ares II DAC for that matter, so that we can provide the correct firmware update to you. But in reality is, do we have the date of shipment, or do we have the time and date of when we change the FPGA chip used in the DAC? Yes, we have. For example, if you purchase the Enyo DAC, this is how the Enyo DAC looks like. It looks exactly the same as the Ares II, except that this particular badge on the front panel says Enyo DAC. Enyo DAC has only one type of FPGA chip. It is EP4CE6F. So we know all the Enyo has this particular 6F FPGA chip. So if you have Enyo DAC with you and you do not want to take this to your hand to remove the top cover and share with us the photo of the FPGA chip, but you're pretty sure you have an Enyo DAC with a photo of the Enyo badge on the front panel, we can provide you the correct firmware update tool for the Enyo DAC to you. So again, if you purchase the DAC from us and ship it through Windshine Audio, we actually know the FPGA model. But there's a transition period of having one chip, having the older chip to the newer chip. So if the purchase time or date shipment from Windshine Audio to you fall between this gray transition time, we may still ask you for a photo. Alright, so the firmware update for different chips has different version. The firmware for the EP4CE6F of Enyo DAC is version 1.3 right now. For the EP4CE22F Ares II, it is version 1.8. So this different version for different FPGA chip causes some confusion on the forum or social media. Yes, we actively read the forum and social media, although we can't possibly actively participate in some of the discussion, but we do actively monitor the forum and social media. So the confusion of the firmware version 1.3, 1.8, or the 1.4 for the Pontus DAC, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. All you need to know is the latest firmware release available on our website windshineaudio.com has the same technique applied throughout. So meaning to say, if you have the Ares II DAC, Enyo DAC, Pontus DAC, or the Terminator DAC, as well as the upcoming new firmware for the Venus DAC, the latest version will have the same fix and technique applied to the DAC. Alright, my throat isn't feeling quite well today. In fact, moving into the new house, the air quality in the new place isn't very good. If you have relocated before, you know what I mean, especially if there's a new place where the furniture is still new, the condition in the new house isn't very good, so my throat isn't really so well. I'm going to end this video quite soon later, but I do hope that you can bear with me. Alright, the firmware is available to download using the firmware update tool link provided to you before. But if you do not have the link with you or you have deleted the email, do reach out to us at firmware@windshineaudio.com and we will be happy to provide the firmware update tool to you. And you have seen that I have another unit with me at the bottom of the Ares DAC. This is just to show you the size comparison of the Ares II DAC with the new CHoco EMEI Integrated M by Kinky Studio. Right, some of the reviews already published, available online, and if you are interested in this unit, do click on the link below as well. Alright, I think I have covered most of the stuff that I want to say today. If you enjoy my video and if you like my content of the channel, do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Oops.